I spent 3 years planning the perfect wedding, just not for myself. My cheating ex-fiancé thought she was getting her fairy tale ending, but I had other plans. What I did next will shock you. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still processing everything. Some people say what I did was too far. Others say she deserved it. You can judge for yourself. I need to start from the beginning to give you the full picture. My name is, let's call me Jake. I'm 29, work in IT, and until last year, I thought I had my whole life figured out. I was with Sarah for 4 years, engaged for one of those years, and we were supposed to get married this past spring. Sarah is everything I thought I wanted. Blonde, bubbly, the kind of girl who lights up a room when she walks in. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a boutique firm downtown, and we met at a mutual friend's party. The connection was instant. We talked for hours that first night about everything from travel dreams to childhood fears. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when she focused on you. We moved in together after 8 months. She had expensive taste, always wanted the best restaurants, the latest fashion, the most Instagrammable experiences. I didn't mind. I made decent money, and seeing her happy made me happy. I thought that's what love was supposed to feel like. The proposal was everything she'd ever dreamed of. I knew because she'd been dropping hints for months, showing me Pinterest boards, forwarding me Instagram posts of elaborate proposals. I saved for 6 months to buy the ring she wanted, a 2-carat princess-cut diamond that cost more than my car. I proposed at the restaurant where we had our first date, got down on one knee in front of all the other diners. She cried, said yes, and immediately started filming herself, showing off the ring. That should have been my first red flag. Not the tears of joy, but how quickly she shifted to documenting the moment for social media. The wedding planning consumed our lives. Sarah quit her job to plan full-time, saying it was too much to handle with work. I supported her financially while she spent her days visiting venues, cake tasting, dress shopping. She had spreadsheets for everything, guest lists, vendor comparisons, timeline breakdowns. The wedding grew from 75 people to 150, from a $15,000 budget to $45,000. I started picking up freelance work to cover the costs. I was working 60-hour weeks, coming home exhausted, but Sarah was always buzzing with wedding energy. She'd want to discuss centerpieces and menu options while I was trying to decompress. When I tried to suggest scaling back, she'd get upset, saying I didn't care about our special day. The guest list became a source of constant tension. Sarah insisted on inviting people we barely knew, co-workers from her old job, college acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years, distant relatives. When I questioned it, she said she wanted our wedding to be an event people would remember. I didn't understand then what she really meant. About 3 months before the wedding, things started feeling off. Sarah became secretive with her phone, taking calls in other rooms, texting constantly during dinner. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say it was wedding vendors or her maid of honor, Jessica. She started going out more often, girls' nights, wedding planning sessions, yoga classes that seemed to run very late. I trusted her completely. That was my mistake. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in February. Sarah said she was going to a late dinner with Jessica to finalize bridesmaid dress details. She left around 7 p.m., kissed me goodbye, and told me not to wait up. I was working on a particularly challenging project, so I barely looked up from my laptop. Around 11 p.m., I realized I was starving. I decided to order takeout from this Thai place we loved, thinking I'd surprise Sarah with her favorite pad Thai when she got home. When I called to place the order, the owner, Mr. Chun, recognized my voice. "Oh, hi, Jake. Sarah was just here with her boyfriend. They left maybe 30 minutes ago. She said to say hi if I saw you." My blood went cold. Her boyfriend. Yes, the tall guy with dark hair. They come in every Tuesday for past month, maybe longer. Very cute couple. She said you know him. I hung up without ordering. I sat in our living room in the dark, mind racing. Every Tuesday for a month. Every Tuesday when she supposedly had plans with Jessica. I called Jessica. Hey Jake, what's up? Jessica sounded genuinely surprised to hear from me. Is Sarah with you? Sarah? No, I'm at home watching Netflix. Why? I told Jessica everything. She was quiet for a long time, then said, Jake, I haven't hung out with Sarah on a Tuesday night in months. She told me you guys had date nights on Tuesdays. The lies unraveled quickly after that. Jessica had been covering for Sarah without knowing it, when I'd ask about their wedding planning sessions. Jessica assumed they'd happened on different days. Sarah had been using Jessica as an alibi while seeing someone else. I stayed up all night, pacing, thinking, planning. Part of me wanted to confront Sarah immediately, but a bigger part wanted to know everything first. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Did she love him? When Sarah came home at 1 a.m., she found me on the couch. She looked flushed, happy, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Hey babe, you're still up? How was work? I studied her face. She was a good liar. If I hadn't called the restaurant, I never would have suspected anything. Fine. How was dinner with Jessica? What did you decide about the dresses? She launched into an elaborate story about bridesmaid dress colors and alterations and timeline issues. She was so detailed, so convincing. She'd clearly been practicing these lies. I didn't sleep that night, or the next night. I started paying attention to everything. Her schedule, her mood, her behavior. The pattern was obvious once I was looking for it. Tuesday night dinners. Thursday afternoon yoga classes. Weekend wedding planning sessions that she attended alone. I could have hired a private investigator, but I'm good with technology. I knew Sarah's passwords. She used the same one for everything. Our anniversary date, plus her maiden name. I felt sick doing it, but I accessed her email and social media accounts. The emails were the worst part. Months of correspondence with someone named Marcus. He worked at the hotel where we'd booked our wedding reception. That's how they met, during one of our venue visits. The messages were intimate, romantic, sexual. Plans for a future together. Complaints about having to play the part until after the wedding. The wedding. She was going through with the wedding. I found messages between Sarah and Marcus talking about their plan. She would marry me, take half of everything in the inevitable divorce a year or two later, and they'd start their life together with my money. Marcus had apparently done this before, targeted engaged women, convinced them to go through with marriages for financial gain, then helped them navigate profitable divorces. Sarah wasn't just cheating. She was running a con. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was calculated, planned, criminal. She was going to take my money, waste a year of my life, and humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. But I didn't confront her. Instead, I started planning. First, I documented everything. Screenshots of emails, phone records, credit card statements showing her expenses at hotels and restaurants with Marcus. I consulted with a lawyer friend who helped me understand how to protect my assets. I quietly moved money into accounts Sarah didn't know about. Then I started working on the wedding itself. Sarah had given me limited involvement in the planning, but as the groom, I still had access to vendor contacts and contracts. I started making calls. The caterer was the first domino. I called and explained that we needed to make a last-minute change to the menu due to severe food allergies that had recently developed. Instead of the elegant plated dinner Sarah had planned, I changed it to a basic sandwich platter. When the caterer expressed concern about the dramatic downgrade, I told him Sarah approved it, but was too embarrassed about the allergy issue to call herself. The photographer was next. I called and said we decided to go with a candid, documentary style instead of posed shots. Could they please focus on capturing genuine reactions rather than traditional wedding photos? The photographer was confused but agreed. The florist was trickier. Sarah had specific ideas about flowers, and she'd been in regular contact with them. But I managed to convince them that Sarah wanted to surprise me with a different arrangement, something more natural and wild, instead of the elegant white roses she'd originally chosen. They reluctantly agreed to the change. The musicians were easy. The string quartet Sarah had booked was expensive and classy. I called and said we decided to go with a more fun, party atmosphere. And could they please prepare a playlist of popular dance hits instead of the classical ceremony music we discussed? But the real masterpiece was the venue coordination. Marcus worked at the hotel. He was in event planning. He would be working our wedding. I called the hotel and asked to speak with Marcus directly. When he got on the phone, I introduced myself as Sarah's fiancé. I could hear the sharp intake of breath. I'd like to discuss some last-minute changes to our wedding reception, I said pleasantly. Sarah mentioned you'd been particularly helpful with the planning. There was a long pause. Of course. What kind of changes? Well, I've been thinking about the timeline. Sarah's been so stressed about everything running perfectly. I thought it might be nice to surprise her by having everything start an hour earlier than planned. Could you coordinate with the other vendors to move everything up? Don't tell Sarah. I want it to be a surprise. Marcus agreed, probably because he was too panicked to think clearly. Here's where it gets good. By moving everything up an hour, I created chaos. The photographer would arrive early and catch the venue staff unprepared. The caterer would arrive to find the wrong setup. The musicians would be confused about timing. But most importantly, half the guests would miss the ceremony entirely because they'd be arriving at the originally scheduled time. But I wasn't done. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made one final call. To Sarah's parents. Sarah's father, Robert, was a proud man who'd been contributing significantly to wedding costs. He and I had bonded over the past year. He'd started treating me like the son he never had. Sarah's mother, Linda, had been like a second mother to me. I invited them to lunch and told them everything. I showed them the emails, the evidence, the financial records. I watched Robert's face turn red with anger while Linda started crying. These people had welcomed me into their family, and their daughter was about to humiliate all of us. What do you want to do? Robert asked after a long silence. I want her to face the consequences of her choices, I said. But I don't want you and Linda to be humiliated, or Jessica, or any of the people who care about Sarah and believed in us. Linda wiped her eyes. What do you need from us? The plan we came up with was perfect. The wedding day arrived. I got ready with my groomsmen, played the part of the nervous but excited groom. My best man, Dave, kept asking if I was okay because I seemed unusually calm. I told him I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. at the hotel's garden pavilion, with a reception immediately following in the ballroom. Because of my surprise timing change, everything was starting at 3 p.m. instead. At 2:30, I was supposed to be getting final photos with my groomsmen. Instead, I asked Dave to handle things and walked to the bridal suite, where Sarah was getting ready. She looked beautiful. That was the hardest part. In her dress, with her hair and makeup perfect, she looked like everything I'd ever wanted. For a moment, I almost lost my resolve. Jake, you're not supposed to see me before the ceremony. She laughed, but she looked nervous. We need to talk, I said. Her bridesmaids scattered, sensing the tension. Even Jessica left, giving me a knowing look. What's wrong? Sarah asked when we were alone. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the email threads between her and Marcus. The color drained from her face. Jake, I can explain. No, I said quietly. You can't. This isn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. This is who you are. She started crying, mascara running down her cheeks. It's not what you think. Marcus and it's complicated, but I love you. I want to marry you. You want to marry my bank account. She collapsed into a chair, still in her wedding dress. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. You're going to do it yourself. I explained what was going to happen. She was going to walk down the aisle at 3 p.m. as planned. I was going to be waiting at the altar. And when the officiant asked if she took me to be her husband, she was going to tell the truth. Tell them about Marcus. Tell them about the plan. Tell them who you really are. Or I will. Jake, please. My family is here. Your family. Everyone we know. That's the point. She begged, pleaded, threatened to kill herself, promised to end things with Marcus, offered to sign a prenup. I listened to all of it with surprising calm. You made these choices, I told her. Now you get to live with them. At 3 p.m., I took my place at the altar. The garden was beautiful, decorated exactly as Sarah had dreamed except for the wild flowers instead of elegant roses. About half the guests were there. The timing change had worked perfectly to thin the crowd. The music started. Sarah's bridesmaids walked down the aisle, Jessica giving me a supportive smile. Then the wedding march began, and Sarah appeared. She walked slowly, clearly struggling with each step. Her father, Robert, was beside her, his face grim. He knew what was coming. When they reached the altar, Robert didn't give Sarah's hand to me. Instead, he stepped back and waited. The officiant began the ceremony. Everything proceeded normally until we reached the vows. Sarah, the officiant said, do you take Jake to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, forsaking all others, as long as you both shall live? The garden was completely silent. Sarah looked at me, tears streaming down her face. She started, then stopped. The silence stretched on. Guests started murmuring. I can't, she whispered. Speak up, please, the officiant said gently. I can't marry him, Sarah said louder. I've been unfaithful. I've been seeing someone else. I was going to marry Jake for his money and then divorce him. The garden erupted. Gasps, shouts, people standing up. My groomsmen looked shocked. Sarah's bridesmaids were crying. But I just stood there calm, watching the woman I'd loved destroy herself with the truth. Sarah kept talking, as if she couldn't stop once she'd started. She told them about Marcus, about the plan, about the lies. She apologized to her parents, to me, to everyone who traveled to be there. Then she ran. Still in her wedding dress, she gathered up the train and ran back down the aisle, past the confused guests, into the hotel. I followed at a normal pace. When I reached the lobby, I saw Sarah and Marcus by the elevators. He was in his hotel uniform, clearly having been working. She was explaining something frantically, gesturing wildly, still in her wedding dress. They saw me approaching, and Marcus stepped protectively in front of Sarah. This is all your fault, Marcus said. You manipulated her. I manipulated her? I laughed. That's rich, coming from you. Hotel security was approaching. Our raised voices were drawing attention. Sarah was sobbing uncontrollably. I'm ruined, she kept saying. I'm completely ruined. She was right. By the end of the day, videos of her confession were all over social media. #WeddingConfession was trending on Twitter. She'd been tagged in dozens of posts, her social media accounts flooded with comments. But here's the thing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The aftermath was brutal for everyone. Sarah's parents were humiliated but eventually thanked me for exposing the truth before it was too late. Jessica felt guilty for unknowingly providing alibis and cut Sarah out of her life entirely. My family was supportive, but worried about how consumed I'd become with revenge. Sarah and Marcus disappeared for a while. I heard through mutual friends that they tried to stay together, but the relationship fell apart within weeks. Apparently, Marcus wasn't interested in Sarah without my money in the picture. Sarah eventually moved back in with her parents in another state. She sent me a long email months later, apologizing and begging me not to pursue legal action. She said she understood if I hated her forever, but she wanted me to know that somewhere under all the lies and manipulation, her feelings for me had been real. I never responded. The money I'd spent on the wedding was mostly lost. The vendors were understanding about the circumstances, but deposits were non-refundable. I was out about $30,000 all told, but I protected my assets and avoided what would have been a much more expensive divorce. Some people say what I did was cruel, that I should have just called off the wedding privately, ended the relationship, and moved on. That publicly humiliating Sarah was unnecessary and vindictive. Others say she got exactly what she deserved, that she would have destroyed my life if I hadn't stopped her, and that public exposure was the only way to make sure she faced real consequences. I honestly don't know which side is right. 6 months later, I'm still processing the whole experience. I've been in therapy, trying to understand how I missed so many red flags, how I let someone I didn't really know convince me they loved me. The hardest part is that I still miss her sometimes. Not the real Sarah, the con artist who was using me, but the person I thought she was. The woman who laughed at my stupid jokes and fell asleep watching movies on my chest and talked about the trips we'd take together. That person never existed, but my feelings for her were real. I'm dating again now, slowly. I'm more careful, more guarded. I pay attention to actions instead of words, to consistency instead of grand gestures. I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels off. Would I do it again the same way? I'm not sure. The revenge felt necessary at the time, like the only way to reclaim some control over my life. But it didn't give me the satisfaction I thought it would. It just left me feeling hollow. Sarah made her choices, and she faced the consequences. But ultimately, the best revenge has been moving on and building a better life without her. Though I have to admit, sometimes I still wonder if she thinks about that moment at the altar, when she had to choose between continuing the lie and telling the truth. In a weird way, it might have been the most honest thing she ever said to me. Update. A lot of people have been asking what happened to Marcus, and if there were legal consequences. Marcus was fired from the hotel immediately. Apparently this wasn't his first time targeting engaged couples, and the hotel had been building a case against him. As for legal action, my lawyer advised that while what Sarah did was morally reprehensible, it would be difficult to prove criminal fraud, since the marriage never actually took place. We decided it wasn't worth pursuing. Sarah's social media presence never recovered. She eventually deleted all her accounts and, from what I hear, works at her family small business now. She's kept a very low profile. As for me, I'm doing well. I met someone new a few months ago, someone who values honesty and authenticity over Instagram moments. We're taking things slow, but I'm optimistic about the future. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well.